Okay, I got the high sign. We're good to go. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the September 8th OCRA membership meeting. We've had a busy night so far. We have a very interesting schedule and the agenda. Lori, if you could move to the next page. Okay, here's the agenda. So we are going to do check-ins. We're going to kind of do them quickly because we want to get to our guest speakers tonight, A.K. Kelly and Gregory Cook, and they're going to tell us all about protecting and managing our forest. And if you've seen the fires that have happened around the country, pay attention to them. And they have Smokey the Bear stickers or plaques or some patches over there. So if you haven't seen Smokey lately, look him up. He knows what he's doing. Okay, with that, we're going to run around the room and do some intros. And while we're doing that, I'll talk a little bit about the rest of the meeting, which we're going to do at the end.
And Dave, W4SAR, Efland.
Tim, AC1TWR, Carborough. Bob, W4FK, Hillsborough.
Paul, N0US, Hillsborough.
Randy, KF4O, Hillsborough.
Arash, KR4GOJ, Chapel Hill.
John, KR4GOK, Burlington.
Boyd, KO4GJO, Hillsborough.
Karen, KD4YJZ, Eflin.
Chip, KF4WBK, Chapel Hill.
Thomas, KD4UHB, Carborough.
Aurora, KN4VXB, Hillsborough.
Lynn, N6PGX, Hillsborough.
And Lynn is also a guest tonight, and we'll hear more about Lynn after the presentation and about what she's donated to the club.
Paul, N2XF, Butner.
Dan, KR4UB, Southwest Orange County.
Pat, KO4QLU, Durham.
So Ron, Kilo Oscar 4, Romeo Oscar November, Pittsburgh.
Matthew, KQ4ZYW, Mebane. Lori, do you want me to read off the people on Zoom? Sure. On Zoom, we've got Fred, KN4QBZ, JR, N4JQR, Charles, KQ4TNF, Will, KR4GNH, Greg, KE8NNJ, Kevin, KW4EE, Mark, K3RAM, Ken, KO4BHJ, Jerry, KA4NJ, and if we missed anyone, if you could please put your call sign at the end of your name in Zoom.
Lori, N1YXU. Trying to get in the screen. There I go.
Wilson, W4BOH, Hillsborough. I didn't realize I was here.
You have your badge. You must be here. And I'm Bruce, N1LN. And let me go back to the agenda. Well, wait a minute. Let's do this. If you guys, I will introduce you again when we get the presentation up, but we really appreciate you coming tonight. And let me give you the microphone so you can do a little bit of your own intro.
My name is A.K. Kelly. I'm the area manager with the North Carolina Forest Service for Orange and Durham County.
I'm Gregory Crook. I'm the Assistant County Ranger for Orange County.
Again, thank you very much for coming tonight. And if we could jump back to the presentation before we go to AK's presentation. Okay, just briefly what we're going to be doing. You're going to hear a little bit more about the membership survey. We talked about it at the last meeting. There's been quite a bit of work done. Matthew, thank you very much. You'll hear more about that. You'll hear another update on succession planning. We're getting toward the end of the year. We still have a couple of offices that have not been staffed. We did not have volunteers to staff it yet. And then we'll go along with closing comments and any other items, including giving Lynn a more appropriate introduction. And we've got one more person that joined us.
Mark Slaughter, KR4 GOI.
Welcome to the group, Mark. Thank you very much. Okay, at this point, we're going to turn the meeting over to AK, and Lori is going to bring up her presentation, AK's presentation, not Lori's. And we're really looking forward to hearing everything she has to say so that we will not be part of the group worrying about forest fires or house fires, or we just got hit by lightning. Did you talk about lightning? Oh, good. All yours.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having us out. We love talking to any different group of people. I spend a lot of time talking to elementary schoolers and middle schoolers. So it's nice to have a little bit more of an engaged audience. Y'all are here voluntarily, unlike the school kids. So today we're going to be talking about a little bit about what we do as the North Carolina Forest Service. And you can go ahead, Lori, to the next slide, please. To introduce myself again, my name's AK. I am recently promoted to the area ranger with the North Carolina Forest Service here. So I cover both Orange County and Durham County. Generally, you just have one county ranger and one or two assistants per county. But here, because the workloads are a little different for such urban counties like Orange and Durham, they've combined them and given me double the work. So, but I get a fancy title, right? So I'm also joined by Gregory tonight. He is new to the agency and he is the assistant county ranger for Orange County. So I do have one other coworker. His name is Matthew Manchester. If any of you live in Durham County, he services that county. But we all kind of work as a team and do it all together. Go ahead to the next slide. So as the North Carolina Forest Service, it can be summarized in our mission, which is to promote, manage, and protect our forest land. A lot of people hear Forest Service and they assume that we're assigned to a park or a national forest or a game land, but our Forest Service here in this state actually serves the private landowners of the state. North Carolina has the second highest wild urban land interface. So the second highest area of land that's interacting with urban areas. So that's like just Orange County is an awesome example of how many people have, you know, a 3-acre lot with a house and 2.5 acres of woods. And we also rank the highest for privately owned forestry land. So it's more applicable in our state to have staff that assist landowners with their private land rather than other states where you have much more federally or state managed land, where you have much higher presence of agencies like BLM or DOI or the Forest Service. So promotion of our forest, that's what I'm doing here today. I always ask the kids, what does it mean to promote things? And it's to talk about them. So as part of our agency, we do talks like this. We do Smokey the Bear programs. And we also do some fire prevention and safety. Management, Gregory will be touching on more later in this talk, but management happens through our woodland management planning. So anyone who has forested acreage in the state can get help from us in managing that, whatever their goals may be. It's also helping with reforestation and afforestation. So we have our state-run nurseries that provide seedlings at an affordable cost. And then we also do protection. And I like to tell people my job exists for protection. That's why they pay me, is to put out the wildfires in the county. But they fill my time with a lot of other stuff too, because there's not that many wildfires around here. So protection is primarily wildfire protection, suppression, but it also is forest pest and disease. And we won't get much into that today, but our agency is, we still got sound? Okay. Our agency is responsible for monitoring any large-scale pest or disease outbreaks. I actually just 2 weeks ago got to go up in one of our observation planes and do a pest survey flight. So we do low flights so that we can point out any like larger outbreak areas and then go and ground truth them, which was pretty cool. And then on a smaller scale, we help landowners who have a single tree or a few trees that are showing stress of pest or disease. We can check it out, and if it's a new pest or disease, we can report it to our greater monitoring system, or we can give advice on management. And that's about it. If you can move on to the next slide. So Gregory's going to start us out talking about what forest management means for our agency and what that means for y'all as residents in this county.
May I have the next slide, please? Oh, I did not know that this had transitions. Okay.
Oh,
All right. Okay, so one of the big things that we harp into when we explore what forest management really means is goals. And a lot of what shapes goals are the benefits that we can get from the forests. Of course, there's forest products. I'm sure lots of people's minds go to things like dimensional lumber, the stuff that you buy at Lowe's, 2x4s, 2x6s, fence posts, flooring, plywood, particle board, those sorts of things. But there's also other forest products that come from trees. You get lots of cosmetics and even toothpaste ingredients. Paper is a huge one. Wood fiber gets turned into a lot of different useful products. But there's also non-timber forest products. Firewood's actually considered a non-timber forest product. Anything that you might want to forage, mushrooms, berries, those are all considered forest products. Our next benefit, we got heat reduction. Not only do our forests provide shade, but through a process called evapotranspiration, which is an evaporation force that creates a pressure differential. That's how the tree actually brings the water all the way from the roots, 80 feet up the top of the tree. That provides a huge cooling effect. And you can see this most drastically in cities where when you have a large urban forest in your city, those areas are going to be cooler than the big, open, bare, bright cement areas because trees also absorb some of the solar radiation that gets reflected around by urban structures like roads and buildings. Water quality, forests grant a huge benefit to water quality. And when we consider water quality, we don't only think of sediment in the water. It's not just how dirty is the water. It's also, trees also filter for extra nutrients that go into the water because too much nitrogen, as I'm sure many of you guys know, or pesticides, any of those sort of pollutants can get filtered out by roots of trees, both physically or absorbed into the actual tissue and prevent those pollutants from going into the water, which can cause all sorts of negative impacts on algae blooms and aquatic wildlife. A big thing for aquatic wildlife is actually the temperature of the water. Fish need cool water, and having well-managed trees and a good buffer on your streams helps ensure that good water temperature for your aquatic wildlife like fish and amphibians. Next is air quality. Like what I mentioned just a minute ago with the roots filtering out pollutants, the canopies of trees can actually physically grab a hold of particles of air pollution, as well as absorbing things like our next carbon. You know, everybody knows that a tree needs to bring in CO2 through photosynthesis to survive. Not only does it absorb chemicals from the air like that, the leaves will also actually pick up things that could go into the air and hurt your lungs or cause negative impacts greater. Carbon sequestration on a larger scale goes into even our forest products, because long-lived forest products, especially like dimensional lumber, as opposed to paper that gets used up quickly, will help sequester a lot of carbon. But even other processes of the forest, such as trees falling, leaf litter getting down into the soil, will help sequester carbon, a lot of carbon. Most of the carbon that is considered sequestered is actually in the soil and not in living trees. Bogs and swamps are an especially cool part of that, because when a tree dies in a swamp, there's no air for decomposition. And so that decomposition process, though it creates methane, which is a more potent greenhouse gas, it takes a lot longer for decomposition to occur in those situations. So that's another consideration. Of course, wildlife, the forest is where the deer live, right? The deer and the birds, but there's a lot of components to managing for wildlife. Wildlife need various types of cover, places to live, and places to hunt and find forage, whether that's berries, prey like rodents, or larger prey for bears. All of that stuff has to be considered. And of course, our next two, healthy forests are very important for the overall biodiversity. And insects and fungus are some of the widest ranges of biodiversity in a forest, because there's so many and they serve so many different functions to keep the whole system running smoothly. Of course, everybody loves recreating in the forest, but there is a lot of considerations that you have to make to ensure that your trails don't cause too much runoff or too much compaction. You keep people to a confined space. And there's other types of recreation. Hunting, we consider recreation as well. And well-being. This is one I don't think people really quite grasp all the way most of the time. Trees are actually wonderful for your health. Just seeing a tree can improve your health. There's actually been studies. I couldn't find the study earlier today, but it has been studies done where if you can see a tree from your window while you're sick or injured, you will actually heal faster. All right, next slide, please. So when we're doing forest management is an action. And part of that, we have to make a decision. We change parts of the forest in forest management. We have to manage the different levels of vegetation from the understory all the way to the tallest, most dominant trees. We can restore ecosystems that have been changed or destroyed. We have to reduce hazards. A lot of times something can happen that we have to mitigate for because there's people around. And of course, we have to maintain forest health, be prepared to stop issues like major pest outbreaks. A lot of people ask, why do we have to do stuff? Why do we have to log? Why can't we just let everything be the way it is? Well, the truth is we don't. We never have. Humanity has always been a part of the ecosystem. And whether you think about it or not, you're breathing, you're driving a car, you're putting in a road, you're building a house, all of this is affecting the ecosystem for a much wider range around you than you might think. And we have had a long, long history of land management. We have had that too. The next, yeah. A big one that everyone can come back to is that Native American use of fire. This is one of the oldest land management techniques, is prescribed fire, because fire can accomplish a lot of the things that you need from a forest. Clearing a spot out of the understory changes a lot of the things that we talked about earlier. It can help improve the health of the trees. can make trees grow better. It varies the type of cover that's available to wildlife. It varies the types of plants that grow that they feed on, and it varies the area that's available for in wildlife hunting. One of the signs that there were people in the Americas was the evidence of prescribed fire that Spanish explorers saw from the ships as they were sailing up the coast of California. They say, oh wait, fire's been set there by a person. There are people here already. Of course, a lot of this area, especially in these counties over the past 150 years, have been clear cut and transformed to be used for pasture or for crops. Conversely, we've seen livestock grazing underneath forests. There's a practice called agroforestry where you are both growing a forest and growing another type of agriculture, be it livestock or a crop, like or another orchard tree. Even some people like grow vineyards under the cover of a forest. It's all for different purposes. We got one more. Yeah, and of course, wood. Harvesting wood for heating has been a huge effect on the forests. Everywhere you go, people affect the forest just by choosing which tree is going to be best to warm their house. What'll be the easiest for me to drag over to my house and chop up for firewood? That tree might be too hard to split, that oak tree, so I'm gonna be harvesting pines to warm my house. That pine burns too fast, so I'm gonna put in the extra work to harvest that oak. It's all forest management, whether you think about it or whether you forgot. Now we're back to goals. When we think about managing forests from a modern or scientific point of view, we come back to what are the landowner's goals? And for us, it's always about the goals of the landowner. And that might vary from any of the forest benefits that we talked about earlier. Some examples are like wildlife, creating snags, performing burns to encourage the growth of a certain species that might produce the feed for deer that you want to see or for the birds that you want to see. And of course, harvesting timber. Harvesting timber is one of the quickest ways, though it's not very quick to grow and harvest timber. It still takes a very, very long time, but it's one of the quickest ways to see a financial withdrawal from your land when you're in a forest management type. And to put it plainly, it's not free to have a forest. You still have to pay to control your pests. You might have to pay for a thinning when the trees are young. And of course, a big one that we see, one of the reasons that we get called out a lot to landowners to provide management advice is because of property taxes. Your forests still have to have property taxes paid on them. And one of the ways to get the property taxes a little lower is to get into the forestry present use value program. And we provide some assistance on that to landowners who requested of us in the form of a forest management plan, where we recommend we come out to the property and we recommend what we see needs to be done to keep that forest healthy and sustainable long-term, whether you want to harvest from it or not. And of course, recreation. You have to install drainage or anything like that, perform maintenance on any trails or roads that you see for recreation. And a lot of times, some of the other management tactics like harvesting or burning or clearing or creating snags or removing snags can greatly increase the recreational value of your property. So this is just an illustration of some of the different types of harvests. Each one, the one that you want to pick, if you need to harvest your forest to keep it healthy or to get a financial gain. It all depends. That's a big word. It's a big word that I was taught in college. When it comes to forestry, the correct answer is it depends. It depends on the ecosystem. It depends on the site. Your property could have very different conditions than one 2 miles away. It varies that much. So you really have to take into consideration what your landowner's goals are and what the site conditions are. Clear cutting, for example, it doesn't look the best, but it is very good. It is a very good way to get a financial return for a less expense. Because some of these other cutting methods, especially single tree selection or group selection or a patch cut, those ones are a lot more labor intensive. And certain species, especially pine, pine does not like to have shade. It doesn't like any neighbors touching it. It doesn't like to be shaded out. So clear cut is a very good regeneration method for pine. Whereas if you have a more wide stand of hardwoods, one of these other cutting methods may be better for its regeneration. That's how the silvicultural cutting systems, which is what these are. Silviculture is, it's like the art and the science of growing trees. These are all designed to regenerate the forest. Each of these are a regeneration method more than they are a harvesting method. Seed tree leaves up a certain amount of trees that the forester who designs the harvest determines is adequate to spread out a bunch of seed along the fresh harvest. And then it's designed for those trees to be taken out after a certain amount of time is allowed for the new seedlings to naturally establish. Shelter wood is the same way, but those trees are left. There's more trees left in order to create better climates for the new seedlings. It's designed to help contain moisture into the new growth trees. Clear cutting typically needs to be hand planted, though it can be regenerated naturally. You have a lot more control if you have a bunch of guys with a hoe go out there and put new seedlings in the ground, which is a lot harder than it looks. I have a lot of admiration for tree planters. And group selection, it can be really good for certain goals. Wildlife, it can create a greatly variated age structure in your stand. But from a timber perspective, you can leave a lot of damage in your residual trees that you might want to come back and harvest later. And when you harvest a lot under a group selection or a single tree selection silvicultural method, you have to come back into that stand with equipment much more often to be able to harvest. And I think that's about the end of my forest management section. So I'm going to hand this back off to AK and I'll come back for questions at the end.
Thank you, Gregory. So I know not everyone here tonight is managing a forest or owns land or is involved in this, but I do really like to take the opportunity when I'm talking to a different group of the public to talk about these things so that you know what's going on in the forests around you. It's really easy to feel frustrated when you see, a big clear cut or you see logging equipment tearing up some soil. Or it's really easy to forget how much work goes in to manage that forest that surrounds your walking trail you like. And so I think it's important for the public to know that this is, people who care about making these decisions and aren't making these decisions lightly, are deciding to do these things. Sometimes a clear cut is the best option, or sometimes a select cut is. I just like people to get the opportunity to hear about the nuance that goes into management decisions. Now we're going to talk about fire. I will say I stole the more interesting topic from Gregory. So As part of the North Carolina Forest Service, we obviously deal with a lot of fire suppression. And that's the flashy stuff, putting out fire. But we do also do prescribed fire. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that today as well. I'm going to be honest, that's why I do this job. I drive around in a big truck all day. I talk to people, and sometimes I get to light stuff on fire. I mean, you don't get better than that, right? I get paid to do all that. But we're going to start a little bit talking about wildfires or bad fire. So we all know what a wildfire is. It is a fire that is unplanned. It is extremely costly, and it is potentially threatening life and property, not just of those who live near areas that are on fire, but of those there to put it out, right? Anytime we have a wildfire of any size, you are putting people's lives in danger because they are out there around heavy equipment, around dangerous tools. Anytime a chainsaw has to come out to cut a single snag, even if it's just, a 1/10 of an acre in your backyard, we are still threatening life and property in that case. In the case of a wildfire too, I wanted to show how the intensity of a wildfire really destroys a habitat, right? So sometimes those fires can get so hot that soil is completely degraded and it becomes hydrophobic, or you have no vegetation left and then you start to have erosion issues. You can see, we've all seen pictures like this before where a wildfire blows through somewhere and every tree is dead. And it looks like the surface of Mars, like just dust and rocks. So obviously we know wildfires are bad, right? But I'm going to talk a little bit about how we put out wildfires and what that looks like. I thought you all might like to know a little bit more about the equipment we use and the processes we use so that you can know more about how to prevent it in your own homes and areas. So we're going to start at the very basics, right? On the left there, we have what is called the fire triangle. Now, when I'm at the schools, I do a little experiment with like a tea light candle, right? And we like put a jar over it and we spray it with water. But you all can kind of get the gist here. A fire to burn needs oxygen, heat, and fuel. All firefighting, whether it is structural, whether it is putting out your campfire at the end of the night, or whether it's us putting out a 10,000 acre fire, relies on this fire triangle. We have to remove one side of the triangle to stop the fire from burning. When we get out deep into the woods or, on the ridge top, there's not enough water in the world that I can put on a fire to stop it. I can't take that heat out of the equation, right? I can't change the weather and drop the temperature down, make it start snowing. I can't pump, the thousands, tens and tens of thousands, I don't know, hundreds of thousands. I don't even know the math, but the amount of water it would take to put out a wildfire. And I can't take away the oxygen either, right? I can't put a jar over that candle like we do in the experiment. So we are left with one thing to do, and that is removing the fuel. So most wildland firefighting tactics you're going to see are, how do we remove the fuel from this situation? I've got a diagram here, and you won't be able to see all the little labels, but just to kind of illustrate what our typical wildfire looks like. It has an origin. Generally, it's going to be directed by the wind or topography. Does fire go faster uphill or downhill? Uphill, right? Because we get the preheating of fuels as it goes uphill. And it goes with the wind or against the wind? With the wind. Or it depends. What if the wind's going downhill? But with wildfires, we generally use some sort of tool to remove the fuel and put in what we call a fire line or a containment line. And we'll start at the heel or the less intense part of the fire, and we will make our way around one of the flanks and all the way around to the head of the fire. Obviously, we don't go straight to the head of the fire, right? That wouldn't work. It would be unsafe, and it would put us in a situation where we're constantly trying to chase our tails. So our tactic in wildland fire is to find a safe anchor spot, get around the side where the fire's flanking, and then get around the head of the fire. And that can happen on a really small scale, right? It can happen in a grass field, or it can happen on 1,000 acres where we're anchoring in at, the bottom of the mountain, and we're going to cut line all the way up the side of the mountain to the ridge top. But it is that same principle, no matter the size of the fire, that influences our strategy and tactic. You can go ahead. So how do we put that line in? Bottom line is we have to remove the fuel from the situation. So on a small scale fire, this is what Gregory and I are doing in the county most of the time. People see my truck a lot. We both drive Type 6 engines, and there is a leaf blower mounted right where everyone can see it. And everyone goes, why do you have a leaf blower? And a lot of people, if you make them guess, they go, oh, is it to blow out the fire? Like, no. I've had that happen before too. I've gotten on fires, and fire department, someone new on the VFD or whatever has a leaf blower and he's blowing it right at the flames. And I'm like, whoa. That's not what that's for. So I actually always say, my line is that a leaf blower is the best wildfire fighting tool in the Piedmont. We have so much hardwood litter here that, heck, we can put a leaf blower on your back and you can do the work of about 10 people with hand tools. And then you also have your hand crews. And in the case of both, it is removing the fuel down to bare mineral soil, right? Because that's what can't burn. So this is something, you can do on your own property, is creating those fire lines around the edge of your property or around vulnerable structures, and removing the fuel that would carry a fire to your target areas. Getting a little bit bigger for fires. Like I said, Gregory and I both drive Type 6 engines. So that on the left is a picture of our older engines. We do drive these white trucks now, but they put us in these Ford F-350 Super Duties, and they're pretty nice. I'm not gonna lie. They're what happens when you give those boys in the shop a budget and a card to charge stuff, and we've got the nice brush guard and a winch. But we use those. They have about 200 gallons of water, and that's enough water for us because most of the time that's not what we're using, right? We're using good old hard sweat and work and putting in line. They also have the capacity to draft water. So we've got a suction system with our slip-on unit that we can pull water out of any creek or, pond, whatever we need to do. And then they also have all the tools we need to run as a hand crew as well if we needed to. At the region level, we have some Type 4 engines. We've got 2 right now for this central region, the Piedmont. The most recent one was built by BME Fire, and that's got an 850 gallon capacity. The difference between our wildland fire engines and structure engines, though, are that they all have to have this pump and roll capacity. So we don't do that much of it here in the Piedmont. Much more common in the Midwest, or strangely enough, parts of the mountains where they've had this invasive grass called pampas grass. Yeah, so you all know. And I'm friends with the county ranger over in Madison County, and he says that's like most of his fires all year, is they'll pump and roll just the pampas grass, because in that case, you actually can remove the heat. You can put the water and create a wet line and stop the fire from consuming more fuel. But all engines are typed by capacity of water, weight, horsepower, and then also pump and roll capabilities. Next, in this area, we will use heavy equipment. Dozers are the bread and butter for the North Carolina Forest Service. In our district, we generally run John Deere 650s, but it does depend on where you are in the state. Out in the mountains, they'll run some smaller dozers. They'll run 550s. And then out on the coast, where they're putting in big line as fast as they can, they'll do bigger dozers, and they'll also do some of those the LGP tracks, the low ground pressure tracks. And so sometimes we pull a plow behind it, and we just disc a line. And sometimes we do a bladed line. Just depends on the situation, the topography, the fuel type. This is a, if you don't mind going back. No, it's okay. On the left there, that's a picture I took when I was out in Oregon. So kind of just showing you the progression of size and scale for firefighting, right? So we've got, we go from the hand crew to the engine, dozers, and then we might get even bigger. I took this picture in Oregon where we worked a line for the whole 2 weeks, working behind logging equipment that they put in dozer line, and then they took logging equipment and cut like further and further and further. So sometimes that equipment has to be used to put an even bigger line in, depending on the timber type. Now you go ahead. Finally, our agency also has some aviation resources. We're pretty unique in that way too. A lot of state agencies contract out their aviation needs, but we get to have 3 different aviation centers. We've got one in each region. Ours is in Hickory. And so for planes, our agency has 2 AT-802 F tankers. We used to have the classic seats, but those are slowly starting to retire. I think we have 1 or 2 of those still in this region. And then we also use those Cessnas, like I was talking about earlier, for observation flights. During really peak fire season, those Cessnas will just run all day to look for smoke columns or any signs of fire. Or they can just be scout planes. Generally up in our northern counties, casual person, they'll be calling them more often if they can't get to where they see the smoke column. And then finally, we also have some helicopters we use. We have 5 with the agency. We've got 3 Bell UH-1H and then 2 of this Airbus Eurocopters. The current tankers, those ATs, they hold about 800 gallons. And then our helicopters, depending on which one they're taking, the dip buckets take about 200 to 300 gallons of water. You can go ahead. Oh man, it's all, you can just click through it all. There you go. So I just wanted to quickly touch on what's causing wildfires here. Number 1 cause year after year after year after year in this state is debris burning. So that's how we prevent wildfires here, is we are careful, we're conscientious, and we're prepared whenever we're burning debris. So that's getting a burn permit with us so that you can be notified if we have a burn ban in place. And you can also get information on what type of conditions to avoid when you're burning. It's a lot of common sense, but hey, I wouldn't have a job if everyone used common sense, right? Yeah. Second is children. So, kids playing with matches and stuff like that. And then we get to incendiary, arson, and smoking. I will say, anecdotally in the counties, it's debris burning, then machine use, then children. We get a lot of highway fires and stuff for people dragging chain or a catalytic converter, blowing up, and that'll catch the grass on fire and stuff. A lot of dragging chain, honestly. Yeah, exactly. And less cigarettes these days because of the technology with the paper these days. You can go ahead and click it again. This is just quickly, I mentioned this before when I was talking to one of y'all. We don't have we're not even in the top 10 for numbers of acres burned, but we are 3rd in the country for number of fires. And that is a result of mainly our high acreage of wildland urban interface, or, like people adjacent to wooded areas. So here where people have, those 3-acre wooded lots and they've got a house on it, or we've got so many small forested tracts as opposed to, areas like California where it's huge preserves and then people concentrated in smaller areas. And it is also a product of the way our system works for wildfires, right? We're reported very thoroughly because of the way our staffing works with the agency. So this is just to give you a quick run around. So we get about 100 fires per year between the two counties. And it just depends. Some years, I was telling someone earlier this year we had an 18-acre fire right off St. Mary's Road. Sometimes we don't get anything above 5 acres. But I always tell people it's because we're so good at our jobs. We don't get that many big ones. But and then the plow is just a measure of, how intense was the fire? Was it bad enough that I needed to get heavy equipment out there, or were we able to catch it? So quickly, careless debris burning is the #1 cause of wildfires in North Carolina. So you all know this. Like I said, it's common sense. But I always have to throw it up here when I'm talking to people, because although I shouldn't put it up too long because I don't want to be out of a job, right? If y'all get too good at controlling fires, then I won't have a job anymore. And you can go ahead. So good fire is prescribed fire. And that is when we intentionally set a fire in a defined area for specific management objectives. So that is it is literally a prescription. You have to write a plan that says what kind of fire, what kind of conditions, when, how many acres, who's doing it, every little aspect, just like you would get a prescription for medication. It is a prescription for this practice for the land, and it's tailored. So it's always going to be lower intensity. So that's, we achieve that by the weather conditions, the fuel moisture, fuel type, time of year, and techniques for ignition, right? We don't just go and light it off and hope for the best. Although it would be more fun that way because it would burn pretty better. But we have very specific patterns and strategies for ignitions. We also make sure it's ecologically appropriate, right? So we're not just going to burn anywhere just for the sake of burning. We burn in areas that will benefit from it. And we make sure there are plenty of people there to watch the fire, right? Because it's not just if something goes wrong, it's when something goes wrong. Prescribed fire is going to have mistakes happen. It's a, dangerous thing, and humans are fallible. So we're always making sure we have the proper tools available. You can go ahead. So this is just a quick comparison. So prescribed fire can, one, reduce the fuel. So it's a hazard reduction so that when an area does catch on fire on accident, the fire is less intense. It can help wildlife, and we also do it in context of site prep. So if logging is done and they need to clear the land so that trees can be planted. I did want to quickly touch on some of our radio use in fire. I mean, maybe I'm what's it called? Pandering. Maybe I'm pandering a little bit, but I know we don't have a lot of time, but I wanted to quickly talk about how absolutely crucial good radio use and good communications plans are in our field. I would argue out of all of the emergency response, it is the most crucial to our life and safety, because we are in remote areas with no cell service in quickly changing conditions, right? And in conditions, I mean, if you're standing in the middle of a stand of trees, are you gonna be able to see the fire that's coming at you, half a mile away? But you're gonna want to know about it, right? So it is a really crucial part of our job. And you can go ahead and go to the next slide. I quickly wanted to show this is I don't know what year it is, but it's for all of the issues that are reported on a fire line. So that's safety issues, management issues, near misses, accidents. The majority was from communication. So the majority of our problems when we're trying to do our job, when we're trying to put out a fire, comes down to radio use. And I would love if we could get some better stuff on it. We currently are. You know, they're talking about, well, if we have time to watch the video, it'll talk a little bit about some of the changes we're making. But right now in Wildland, we pretty exclusively rely on VHF. So I brought my BK in. This is what we're using right now. We generally use these in Wildland Fire because they're field programmable. So you can use them in your home district, and then I can go to a fire, go to an incident, and if either, you know, it's a big incident and I have a special tent I'm going to and some guy handles it, or I'm showing up, you know, flying by the seat of my pants and I'm taking a cloning cable and connecting this one to someone else's and getting their TAC channels. But we really like the BK radios, the VHF in Wildland Fire, also because of the line of sight and the ability to have portable repeaters. You know, it's possible to put in cell towers, the portable cell towers for our 800 radios, but it's much more cost effective and easier to put up those VHF repeaters. And especially out in more mountainous areas, it's really, you know, it's really crucial. We kind of have the lose-lose here in a more urban area because I can never use the VHF unless I can like see someone. And then also, you know, you get to some areas of the county where you don't have cell signal either for the 800, but you know, you got to find out what works. So then we also, the 800s we don't use in a wildland context, like within our own agency, but we do use it to work with our cooperating agencies like the fire departments and stuff like that. And then we'll also sometimes use it at a district level just because it's a little more reliable in our district at least. And then I do have a video that generally is just about our cash system and our supply system and how we distribute radios as on a national scale and how that system works together. Because obviously Wildland Fire is a lot about helping out other agencies, other states, other areas, because we can't staff enough people to fight a 10,000 acre fire, you know, in one area. No. Yeah. I think I messed up. Oh, I'm good. Okay. So a snag is a dead standing tree. So it's a great opportunity for wildlife habitat. And it's a great danger to my noggin when I'm walking through the woods, right? So depending on what we're managing the woods for, it's a really good thing or something we don't want. So sometimes there's like some of our conservation programs, like federal programs that are meant to encourage wildlife, will have you actually create snags, so girdle trees, so that you have habitat, nesting area for birds, stuff like that. Oh, gotcha. Yeah, what's up? Yes. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh. We actually just went to someone's property at the end of last week to try and help him with kudzu. And I'm not willing to throw my hands up at kudzu like I do at stiltgrass, but cuz kudzu just feels like I can't give up that fight yet, but it sure is one that's hard to have hope against. Yeah, it definitely, that's a rough one. That's what I told him. I told him he should buy a couple goats and just fence it in. That'd be the cheapest way to do it. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, we're at NIFC, it's middle of winter, and we're gonna go talk to some folks at the National Incident Radio Support Cache. This is where they manage the inventory of radios that go out on incidents nationwide. So we're just gonna get an overview of how these guys do their jobs and what's in the building and how they fix the radios, service them, all that good stuff. So let's take a look. To me, when I walk in here, this is pretty impressive. I mean, I was describing to you, this kind of looks like the Home Depot of radio caches.
Well, in actuality, that's kind of what it is, because we have in excess of 8,000 handheld radios, about 150 VHF repeaters, about 100 UHF repeaters, aircraft link kits, remote kits. We've got a lot of radios.
These radios are primarily sent to the larger fires.
Absolutely.
And the districts, obviously have their inventory of radios.
The firefighter on the ground, when they get a radio from the cache, it's going to be a radio that they are expecting. It's a radio that they already know how to use.
I think about, the batteries that these things go through, and I'm trying to remember what my expectations were for batteries. I guess I usually would just run them until I started getting the blinking light, and then I'd pull my cassette of little taped together batteries and slam them in there.
Yes.
And I remember thinking that I was packing a lot of batteries. So do you think the batteries are getting better?
The batteries are definitely getting better. The battery chemistry is getting better and everything like that. But as we add more bells and whistles to our radios, they suck more juice. One thing I can tell you about AA batteries is heavy day, heavy fire season, middle of the summer, we go through in excess of 350,000 AA batteries a day. 350,000 AA batteries a day. That's nationally, not just here out of the cache. That's all of the fires, all of the incidents everywhere in the country. 350,000 AA batteries a day. That's a lot of AA batteries.
Wow. Okay, I copy.
So what we have here is kind of our museum, because like we were talking about earlier, you can't figure out where you're going to go until you know where you came from. I can remember working for a crew for DNR back in the day. If we had 2 radios like this on a crew, we were happy. And let me tell you, those were a bear to lug around. It's got 4 channels on it. The MX330, this was a 2-channel radio. But I'll tell you what, this was a heck of a lot easier to pack than that pack set. Just before we went to the King radios, we had the MX360. Now you've got 8 channels. And these are a synthesized radio, so they can be programmed, but not programmed in the field. So when we finally went to the King radio, which is a field programmable radio, that changed the whole ballgame. When the equipment is coming back from a fire, the first place that it's going to stop is rework, which is the area that we're in right now. And that's where the folks would go through, clean the kit up, get all the junk and debris out of it. If there's anything lost, stolen, or damaged, replace that, make note of it, and then they'll send it up to the technicians for them to test it. And so here's where the technicians are actually working on the radio. Aircraft link kits that he's working on right here. And generally, this is the unit that's going to be used to talk from the helibase to the helicopter. So what we have here is the command repeater. This is what, when they're out on the fire, division soups, whatnot, are talking back to the ICP. If we need to use the repeater for extended coverage over the fire, this is what we're now utilizing. They're going to go through, test them, make sure everything passes the tests, and then it's going to go out and be voice checked. Once it's voice checked, then it'll come back in, actually goes back to the rework area. They're going to now repack the kits, put a ready for issue sticker on it, and it's ready to go back out the door.
We're going to talk to Gary Stewart. He's the Communications Duty Officer Coordinator. He manages all the frequencies nationwide for any incidents we go on. But this is, I guess you could call it their command center for frequency management. And this is Gary, and he's sitting at his station with the display right here. The one that really stands out to me is this display that represents each incident that was happening. What was the date?
August 1st.
the 15th. August 1st through the 15th of last fire season. This represents all the different incidents that needed different frequencies. And as Gary will explain, this is a pretty complex process. By the time he gets all these frequencies distributed legally and fairly and all that kind of stuff. So
the position that we do as the communications duty officer coordinator, I am the one that finds all of the temporary frequencies for all wildfires nationwide or all risk incidents. It's an extremely large part of wildland fire. We have to ensure that there is legal, authorized frequency use with zero chance of interference. DOI, USDA only has 194 frequencies. We reuse those. Frequencies are a limited resource. There's only so many. When we get into a situation like this, we will call in what we call our communications coordinators. They're an extension of our office, and they will go out and set in the Geographical Area Coordination Center and work just in that GAC. So I'm feeding them information. They're contacting the communications unit leaders and working closer with the GAC and the communications unit leaders on the fires, where I am mainly working with the Washington office, making sure that we have the equipment available as the requests come in so that we can fill them and get them out of here on a quicker basis.
Here at the fire center, we have to strive for reliability because what we're putting up is a portable communication system. It's not permanent infrastructure, so we can't put in a lot of those bells and whistles that may be available with a permanent infrastructure type system. If we had a digital radio system in place, which we will at some point in time, once we get to digital, we would be able to, for example, cut down on some of our radio traffic by being able to have a pre-scripted message in your phone where send a burst transmission to supply and they've got the order. I now don't have to send that message in with breaks and everything else tying up the radio system. The big issues with cell phones and mobile devices, they work great in an urban area. They work great where you've got cell phone coverage. Even when we get out on incidents, people want us to bring in cows and colts, cells on wheels, cells on light trucks to give them more coverage. But for the person who's actually out on the fire line, the coverage is, at this point in time, not available. Now, maybe if it's something that's provided by satellite or something like that, yes, we would then be able to give everybody all the apps they want. We would also be able to do tracking and things like this. The whole idea of unmanned aerial vehicles and what are those going to do for us in communications and a lot of other things. We have actually utilized Civil Air Patrol planes to fly over a fire with a repeater in them and provide the communications for a fire. If at some point in time we would have a UAV that was able to carry a repeater for a payload, that can sit up there and loiter for a heck of a lot longer than a Civil Air Patrol plane can. Then it's just a matter of how long the battery is going to last. You know, maybe we'll throw solar technology onto that UAV to keep those batteries charged indefinitely.
So I'm guessing you're probably recommending that everybody go through the process of programming, accessing channels, setting up priorities, all that kind of stuff before fire season, right?
Yeah, if you're coming to fire season and you haven't, say, played with your radio recently, it's a good idea to just get refreshed. Hey, remember, know your radio before you go out there. Trying to learn a radio on an incident just screams, watch out.
You look at all these fatality fires or fires where things went bad, and there's always an issue with communication. Something has been balled up with communication.
Yes. If you don't have communications established, you can't go out there and safely try to attack this fire.
Right.
Bottom line.
My impression is when we have problems with communication, it's not necessarily the radio.
Exactly.
It's how we manage the frequencies on the radios and all that kind of stuff.
Well, and sometimes it may be a communications issue, but the communications issue is that people didn't sit down and talk about exactly what they're going to do. How are we going to accomplish this?
Radio systems are intended to be reliable and predictable, but when the conditions are constantly changing, there will be surprises. When they happen, what's your default? Do you have a fallback, a plan of action that everyone on your crew knows? Take a close look at radio operations on your crew. Consider standard operating procedures that can help sort things out when it gets confusing.
All right. Well, thank you all. I hope that was at least semi-interesting. So Gregory and I will be here through the end of the meeting. If you have any other questions, do we have time to take questions now? Absolutely. Well, great. Then any questions? You want me to?
Do we have much press in this area of ground fires turning into canopy fires? Yeah, that's a huge problem out west, but hope with the moisture and whatnot.
It's pretty rare, at least in this central part of the state, that we have crown fire. It happens for sure. I mean, just this past spring up in Caswell County, Brian, the county ranger up there, had a crown run on a fire in a pine plantation. But you're right, here it doesn't happen as frequently. It generally happens in younger stands, and less so in our hardwood stands as well. Luckily, because I've seen some hard crown runs before, and they're pretty scary. And then also sometimes on the coast where you have bays and or rhododendron in the mountains, you'll have kind of that mid-story fire.
I got a bunch of those seedlings once at the fair, actually. They were very nice to give them away. They did not tell me about that part of digging and putting in the ground and stuff. Are there people who plant small stands, or can you hire somebody to plant 2 or 3 acres?
Yeah, you absolutely can. So our bigger tree planters in the area who are planting like bare root seedlings like you get at the fair, generally they're going to be planting more than 2 or 3 acres, but you could probably catch them, towards the end of the season, and they'd put some trees down for you. I tell you what, I've had to plant trees before for my training, and I wouldn't even want to do an acre. So I would be hiring someone too.
I have 2 related questions. One is kind of generic, and it is like, how important is this, like, keeping debris out? If you have like a small wooded area behind you and you maybe have to like trim some tree branches and that kind of thing, how important is it to kind of like manage that debris and not just leave it in the woods for fire prevention? And then the second question is, if it is important, I have a weird observation that I want to know that if it's just me or not, that it's not disappearing as quickly in my yard. I may be bad about just throwing things in the woods and leaving them there. And I was wondering if that has anything to do with there's an invasive ant species that eats termites, and if that is somehow related.
So I don't know specifically about the ant species, but I can answer the question about removing brush from your wooded area to protect your home from fire. And that is not your biggest concern when we're talking about having a fire smart home. So if you all have any other questions or want to see some pictures and stuff, you can swing by my office anytime. I've got a bunch of handouts, or go on firewisenc.com. And generally, our biggest concern when we're talking about keeping our homes safe from wildfire is creating that break in fuels between your home and your woods. So I would be less concerned about reducing the understory or the midstory or dead wood in my wooded area, and be more concerned about trimming any trees that are within 5 to 10 feet of my roof, making sure my gutters are cleaned. I know that's a silly one, but that's how most of the time in a wildland setting, houses catch on fire from embers thrown and catching the roof on fire. It's much rarer for, especially in this area, for a fire to be running hard enough to come right up to the side of the house. It's much more from ember throw. So making sure you have a roof that's well repaired and well cared for, sealing your box eaves, and again cleaning those gutters. But creating a fuel break between your home and the woods can reduce any chance of the fire spreading. So whether it's landscaping with fire resistant plants or keeping an actual lawn that's mowed around your yard, but having a way for the fire to stop is the best thing you can do.
I I have a couple of quick notes about the decomposition. I don't know anything particularly, I'm sorry, about the ants and the termites. But it's probably not a factor, as most decomposition of woody material is done by fungus. And so there's a little bit that's done mechanically by insects, but most of both mechanical and chemical decomposition of wood will be done by fungus. And to get your any forest debris to just decompose quicker, the more spread out and the smaller chunks it's in, that'll increase the surface area more. There'll be more opportunities for those funguses to get in and actually start the process of decomposition.
Having been in Colorado and seen several fires, I know it doesn't happen here often, but if a wildfire is heading your way in your house, run like the wind.
Oh yeah, that's definitely good advice.
And where is your office?
Our office is in the new county building across from the DMV on 70. So we're just down the road from here. The Bonnie B. Davis Center, where that new, there's like a county detention center, and then there's a larger building with a lot of the agriculture and county services in it. So we're 1020 US Highway 70 West. No, that is our district office. And you can also always find help there, but you won't have my smiling face. So, although those guys sit in their offices a lot more than I do, so you might be able to catch someone more often there. Any other questions? Well, thank you all so much. Yeah. There is lots of free stuff on the back table there. Take as many as you want. I'm always happy to bring out the more practical adult things instead of the frisbees and the crayons. So don't be shy about that. And I also, if you want to check out the truck and take a look at our Type 6 engines and our setups, we've got them here tonight, and we can show you around after the meeting as well.
Thank you both very much. Very interesting, and really appreciate you taking the time to come here tonight. Well done. Okay, what I'd like to do is cover a couple of quick things. First of all, is this thing on loud enough to hear me? Is it? Okay, I can't tell. If I can't, now I can hear it. Okay, membership survey. We mentioned this at a previous meeting, and what we're trying to do is put something together that you members of the club have the opportunity to make a selection about what future programs you would like to have at your club meeting. So we talked about this at a couple board of directors meeting, and Matthew was the winner in putting the survey together. And many of us in the board of directors actually completed the survey so he could tune it up and take a look at the reports and see what it is. All right. And what you will be soon receiving, all right, is an email with a link in it, so you can go to that particular selection and fill out that survey. There's 27 different selections, something like that, 27 different topics. You can pick a quantity of them. Then they will be all sorted and find out which one has the most votes, second, third, etc. So we can have a pretty good idea of what you would like to have for club programs next year. Now, if you are impatient and you don't want to wait that long, or get your phones out, okay, and take a picture of the QR code, and that will take you right there. All right, you can do it now. And thank you, Aurora, for putting the QR code together. I will get out of the way, okay, and you can get the QR code. It'll take you right there. It'll take you probably 15 minutes maybe to wait a minute.
So for those who are not familiar with QR codes, you take your camera out like you're getting ready to take a picture, And if you center the QR code in enough of the frame of view, it'll bring up a little blurb thing on the bottom that looks like a link for an HTML for a website. And then you just tap that link and it'll open up the website. But if you take the picture, it won't do it. You have to have like a QR code reader. Most newer phones have them built in. If you just open up the camera, occasionally older ones. And sometimes it helps if you zoom in and center it. Yeah. And then so you just click on, where you see the link, you just tap on it. And it'll bring it up. Yeah. So there you go. So you just tap on the link. Yeah, you used to, in older phones, you used to have a special app to do it, but most phones that have been made in like the past few years, it's built into the camera.
So please fill this out to give your future leadership team the opportunity to know what you would like to hear about next year, okay? And Matthew, thank you very much for the time you put in doing this and for the time that you will be putting in, yes, and the time that he will be putting in going through all of your selections and sorting it, and then we'll bring that back to a meeting, probably September, probably the November meeting, okay? Now, in the email that Matthew sends out, okay, there will be a date in that says, please complete this survey by. Those of you that just clicked on this, before you get out of this room tonight, have it done. It shouldn't take you any longer than that, but if you need it, but by all means. And there's also a place on it, should those 27 not be sufficient for you to figure out what you would like, there's a place to make suggestions about a different type. And there's also something else that I think you will appreciate, at least I know I will, and the future leadership team. If you would like to give a presentation, or if you would like to assist in giving a presentation, because it's not just, hey, somebody go do some work, I want to hear about it. It's, I would like to volunteer to bring this topic to the membership meeting and do the presentation. So it's all in the survey. Please fill it out. Any questions? There you go. Then there'll be a link on the website also. So you got 3 ways to get there. Okay, next page. Succession planning. Okay, you've been hearing about this for several months. Again, thank you, Fred, for bringing this up. We need to make sure we know what we're doing next year as far as club officers. Next slide, please. Where are we? So right now, Matthew not only does surveys, he's taking over for Lori as the club secretary. Thank you, Matthew. I kind of knew this at the last meeting, but I purposely didn't want to make an announcement because I didn't see it in print yet, and I didn't want to put Dave on the spot. But Dave has volunteered to take on the duties of call sign trustee, so he'll be taking over for Dan. And these are all voting, by the way. We have to vote for these people. So this is the group we're going to be voting for. Ben, KO4BHX, has offered to be on the board of directors, and so has Brad. And Brad and Matthew were both putting these surveys together. But when Brad saw Matthews, he said, I quit. Matthews, we're going to do Matthews. But I'd really like to thank Brad for taking the time to put another survey together. Okay, certain positions are not yet up for re-election this year, and that would be Boyd, vice president. So Boyd has got at least 1 more year. And according to the new bylaws, you can be in the leadership team for 4 years. So he may have 3 more, but at least 1 more for sure. Okay. And also with Ron. And Ron, thank you very much. And what Ron did is he worked with Dan for the better part of a year, understood what was going on with the treasurer role. And now he has taken over. And this is your first year, right? First full year. Okay. And one of the things that Dan brought it tonight. One of the things that Dan has done is somehow he found a high definition projector. So the next time when Ron brings his quarterly report, we can actually read the numbers on it now. So yeah, thank you to DFMA. Okay, our sister club. Okay, now here's some issues. Okay, I am not your president next year. This is the end of my 4th year. It is in red because I am not your president next year. Let me make sure you understand that. This is not me kidding. I am not your president next year. I am not going to be in this for 5 years. Maybe I'll come back at some time, but Christmas party is the end of me. Okay. And I need to hear from the other board members if they're interested in running for office again because everybody else other than, let's see, I think I'm not even sure who the board members are that are in their first year right now. We have a couple, I think, that are in their first year. But we need some more volunteers that are interested in being on the board of directors. So this is still an active recruiting process. So if you're interested in joining the board, or if you're interested in becoming the president, give me a call. We can do the last few meetings together. It's a lot of fun, okay? But there's some things you need to learn how to do. One thing is you get to take over the YouTube channel because that's mine right now. So we have to learn how to figure out how to transfer that. Okay. So any questions about those two topics? Okay, Wilson, could you do, now we have some time, another intro for Lynn?
I don't know about another one. I can do the same one again. We got an email a while back from a lady, a nice lady, whose name was Lynn Williams. And she said that she and her husband had been sailors and they used ham radio in their sailing, but he was gone and she was not on the air and wanted to give her radio to a worthy organization. And somehow she stumbled on us. And needless to say, I said that we would probably accept it and invite her to the meeting. And she is here. It would be nice to hear a few words about sailing. Okay. Well, you have a call, so you should come every time, you know. It's an obligation of anybody with a call to come to the club meeting. So thanks for coming. Thanks for the radio and good to see you. We know how to handle that sort of thing.
So I have the radio in my car. Thank you, Lynn, very much. And I will be going through the inventory of everything that's in the box. I believe I need a connector from Wilson for the power supply. So I'll get a connector unless there's one in the box. I haven't looked at the inventory yet. Not a problem. Chances are, I don't know if you've heard of this, but there's a location in the club called the Land of Magic. The Land of Magic is Wilson's basement. If there's anything you need, he probably has 3 or 4 of them. So, you know, yeah, that's one of his problems. He keeps getting more stuff. But anyway, we will get the radio tested and on the air, and then we will definitely let you know at a future meeting while you're here, okay, exactly what we did with it. Well, I had a TS 440, so I'm familiar with the 430, so it shouldn't be a problem.
It was given to us when we started cruising by a dear friend who was also an operator, but at that point land-based. And he'd had this on his boat and he gave it to us. So.
Thank you again very much. Okay, I think Chip had something he wanted to mention. Let me wander over to Chip and then we'll kind of open it up if anybody else has something else.
Yes, hunger is a problem in the Durham, Chapel Hill, Orange County area. I volunteer at the food bank. I'd like to suggest that once a month you bring cans of food to the meeting and I will take them down to the food bank.
Excellent. I think that's great. If you could, we'll put it in the meeting minutes, but if you could send something out as a reminder, that would be great. Putting them in the meeting minutes, people are not necessarily going to remember it. So if you could send something out, send it to the groups IO. Dan will probably republish it to the larger distribution list and let's figure that out.
OCRA, Orange County. We take stuff.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you very much, Chip. Okay. Anybody else have anything that they would like to bring up tonight? Wilson.
I'm sorry to be speaking again, but since Aurora is here, I think we should celebrate. Aurora is spearheading the group to do what you probably wouldn't believe if we weren't ham radio operators. there are some people who are going to take apart old TV sets and use the components to make transmitters. And maybe, I mean, this is a stretch, but maybe even a receiver, a primitive receiver. And those activities are going to occur in the Land of Magic. But Aurora is working on the schedule, and I started to say soliciting, but that's probably not quite the right word. Looking around for people who might want to participate. So if you want to participate, let us know. Inevitably, for this to have any value at all, there has to be a little bit of instruction in what a tube is and what it does, and why, and how you might use it in your life. So it will be fun. It will not be quick. This is going to take multiple sessions, like 10, to really get anywhere. But there seems to be some energy to go forward.
Would you like to formal invitation?
Oh, just send me an email or talk to me in person, and I'll add you to the list of people that will. Sometime probably early next week, once I've gotten I had time for people to respond, I'll send an email to interested parties, and it'll likely be on Sunday afternoons based on the feedback I've gotten so far. But we could probably do the occasional Saturday if that works better for people. And we'll just come up with a list of dates for this year, and I anticipate this will be into next year before we get something done, because it'll be once or twice a month. It won't be every week.
So just a quick story. I got my license in 1963, and a buddy and I used to go every Saturday after he'd pay his newspaper bill, because he got his money from his paper route. I got mine from my allowance from my parents. But we would go to a place called Baker's TV. And he had shelves of stuff that he took apart from TVs. He had old military surplus stuff. And for the most of the components that Bill used in his first transmitter, he got from Baker's TV. He didn't take the TV apart, but Mr. Baker did, and it was in his store. So it does work. Anybody else got anything tonight before we close it down here? It is some time. Okay, 8:54. We've got any more questions for our firefighting folks? Okay, that'll do it. Next meeting. Oh yeah, any questions on Zoom? If there are, please unmute yourself and shout it in.
Aurora, how goes the defense?
You're not fantastic. So how do we address you now? Doctor? Okay. Okay. Congratulations. I know you put a lot of work into it, so congratulations. Okay. Anything else? I don't think so. I guess it's a wrap. Okay. Thank you, folks. Thanks for coming, and we will see you in October.